This is a look at the Olympus 12-50mm f3.5 to f6.3 zoom. This has turned out to be my most difficult lens to review so far. Normally, when I consider a lens, I reflect on other lenses of its type to put it into perspective. In comparing the 14-42mm Olympus kit lens with the Panasonic 12-35mm f2.8, you must take into account that while the Panasonic is the better lens, it ought to be since it costs 4 times as much, and so on. You can't do that with this one. The only comparison that came to my mind was not with another lens. It was with Gérard Depardieu, the French actor. It's plug ugly, but it's multifaceted, a one-off. You want wide angle? It has 12mm. The 14mm of a kit lens is quite wide, but 14 to 12mm is a bigger step than it sounds. For many photographers, 12mm is as wide as they'd ever need. You want telephoto? It has 50mm. It's not really a telephoto, but it is enough to give some decent perspective effects. You want macro? It's not a true macro lens, which would focus down to life-size 1:1, but it borders on it with a dedicated close focus setting that focuses as closely as all but specialists would need. But there's more. If you're into video, it has power zoom as well as manual. Also, it doesn't trombone when you zoom, which while not crucial, I do prefer. Overall, what we're looking at here is a very, very interesting lens. I still think it looks like a dog's thingy though. But, to the facts. The lens is physically longer than the Olympus 14-42 and a little smaller in diameter. The zoom and focus ring aren't of the silky smooth feel variety, but the lens overall feels more substantial than most kit lenses. Unusually, it's weather sealed too. And even more unusual is the power zooming I mentioned. Most people like power zooming for video, but I like it for stills too. If I was having to change focal length in a hurry, I'd use manual zoom. But the beauty of this lens is you can swap from one to the other by a simple push or pull on the zoom ring. It's instinctive and means rather than use one or the other, you just use whichever is best under the circumstances. Even more, you can control the speed of the zooming depending on how hard you twist the zoom ring, which is great for video. There are 2 buttons on the side of the lens. One is a function button. It is the mysterious L function entry on the Olympus's custom menu, and you can assign it to a wide range of functions including focus lock. There's no Panasonic L function menu item, so the button is redundant with Panasonic cameras. I'm not even sure that all Olympus cameras have the L function item on the menu. The other button is to press to go into macro mode. Hold it in and push forward on the zoom ring. Hey presto, macro. Okay, it's not technically macro, but it's more macro than close focus. Oh, and there's a window too, to confirm manual zoom, power zoom and macro positions on the zoom ring. The front element doesn't revolve on focusing, so it's good for filters. Performance. This is not optically the best performing lens in my bag. It earns its place for other reasons. But if the optical performance was at any point seriously below par, I wouldn't give it bag room. It isn't seriously below par. It has more distortion and purple fringing at the wide end than the best lenses, and it is not as sharp as the best at the long end. There's some flare too, which isn't helped by Olympus as usual not supplying a lens hood. This is getting beyond disgraceful, Olympus. But you really need to be a pixel peeper to make serious criticism of this lens's performance. In general, for day-to-day use, you wouldn't find anything wrong with it at all. Focusing speed is really fast, though we've come to expect that from native Micro Four Third lenses. With an aperture of f6.3 at 50mm, this is never going to be a winner of the shallow depth of field stakes. But here it is, wide open at 50mm. I can live with that. By the way, 50mm is the weakest part of its performance, so this shot here is the worst this lens is going to be. I can live with that too. Here is a comparison between the Panasonic 12-35mm wide open at f2.8 and the 12-50 wide open at about f5.6 at 35mm. You can see that the Panasonic, my personal benchmark, is better, but that the Olympus is not greatly different. I'm not sure that my comparison means much, outside the fact that if you have a limited budget, you sacrifice speed, but not that much quality. Since I use the iPad Lumix app quite a lot with my GH3, I was curious to know whether this zoom can be power zoomed remotely, as can the Panasonic power zooms. Here is the answer: yes, it can. One thing I did find is that the lens must be set to power zoom before you connect to the app. You can't connect on manual and then change to the power zoom. So, to sum up. It's really difficult to sum up actually. Always you're looking for comparisons, but this lens defies comparison. Like Monsieur Depardieu, it must be judged by its own standards. That's hard because it makes its value very subjective. Does the much wider than standard zoom range compensate for the slow speed at the long end? Does the macro facility and power zoom compensate for optical performance that falls below the best kit lenses? The extra 2mm at the wide end makes a real difference, as does the extra 8mm at the other. The slow aperture is less important now that we have such good high ISO sensors. On the one hand this, on the other hand that. I can say that if buying a camera to use with just the kit lens, given the choice of this as a kit lens or one of the other standard kit lenses, I would certainly go for this one. But if I already had a selection of lenses, I wouldn't add this one to it. My overall view is a less than helpful quote from Alfred E. Newman of Mad Magazine fame. For people who like this sort of thing, this is the sort of thing they will like. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my friends at SRS Microsystems at Watford for the loan of this lens.